Indeed, so let's get into this game. We're seeing the Grimmsnarl paired up with that Calyrex Ice Rider and Ogerpon and Calyrex starting off for Louis' side of the field. So nasty plot potential here, and doesn't even need to worry about the Thunder Wave that could come out from the Grimmsnarl if you just go for the follow me on the Ogerpon. But of course you do want to be going for an Ivy Cudgel into that Ice type Calyrex if you can get away with it. So and it's a little bit awkward because there could also just be that Kyogre switch in to keep it safe. So do you prioritize getting the screens up? Do you want to try and get the Thunder Wave going so you can get some speed control? Because either option would be entirely reasonable here. I wouldn't be surprised if the Calyrex does go for the Terrestrialization in the face of the Calyrex. But then you would really need to switch in that Kyogre because it's the Terra Grass on the Calyrex, and that doesn't help against the Ogerpon. And that's actually, I think, quite a smart lead coming out from those. Even though there is Kyogre, it's not currently on the field and could switch in, the Ogerpon is still threatening a lot of things. It could have threatened an Ivy Cudgel into the Calyrex. It could have threatened the Follow Me just to keep that Calyrex safe from a Thunder Wave as well.
That's the thing, Ogerpon really has a lot of decisions to make here, and the temptation certainly is there to go for the Embody aspect, get that +1 attack, and be able to go on the offensive. Looks like Kyogre is not switching in, and Louis has made the call to invest into this Ogerpon, so it is going to go for the +1 attack, Embody aspect, and if this is an Ivy Cudgel, finding its mark down on either of the opposing Pokemon, it's going to do some formidable damage. Critically, I think, though, as you mentioned, you want to get rid of that Calyrex from play. Adrian also going for the Terrestrialization, utilizing that on the Calyrex. You have that Grass typing. However, if this is indeed going to be where the Ivy Cudgel is landing, it's going to be devastating. Yeah,
this could be a lot of damage here. Is it going to be the Thunder Wave, or is it just going to be a screen to be able to get some damage reduction? That looks like the Reflect to me, so the physical damage not going to be as effective.
Certainly not going to be as effective, but that is going to be no contention for this Astral Barrage. It finds its mark on both the opposing Pokemon, does about a third of damage, very respectable, but it's critically about where this Ivy Cudgel is going to follow up into. It's going to be popping out from behind the mask and finding its mark down onto that opposing Grimmsnarl. It is going to take it from play.
Yeah, so that Calyrex got away with it. The Ice Rider not hit by the Ivy Cudgel and might have still been KO'd there. And that means it's able to fire off a Glacial Lance now. That's going to do very respectable damage. I say respectable damage. Almost knock out that Calyrex Shadow Rider with a critical hit.
Yeah, that definitely is giving a swing of momentum to what that Calyrex is capable of, but it wasn't quite enough to be able to get that Chilling Neigh boost. But of course, Calyrex on Louis' side is running that Life Orb.
Yeah, so that means it's only got one hit left in it now. And there is that Kyogre, and now it's actually looking quite comfortable. The Grassy Glide won't do too much to that Kyogre, even though it's physical and bypassing the Assault Vest. We've got the Reflect now going to be keeping it safe. The Calyrex really won't do too much to that Kyogre because of the Assault Vest as well. And then if it attacks, then it's going to sacrifice itself to its own Life Orb recall. So a very brave play coming out here from Adrian. That could have been the Ivy Cudgel into the Calyrex, and I think even with the Reflect, that would have still KO'd. But now this is a fantastic position for Adrian.
Yeah, nice defensive play from the Ogerpon here, just going for that spiky shield as the Astral Barrage does come through once again, utilizing its speed to try and get some damage on the board. Still not enough to deal with that Calyrex, and of course we know the special defensive capabilities of this Kyogre. The Life Orb will be the victim to that Calyrex, so Louis losing one of his own Pokemon by default as the follow-up was coming through. But of course the spiky shield going to keep the Ogerpon nice and safe for now.
Yeah, is this going to be Trick Room though? Yeah, it is. So that Calyrex has completely flipped the script, and now the training on the Kyogre is going to be quite important into this Ogerpon. Maybe not so if the Rillaboom comes in, because if you're going for Grassy Glide with the Ogerpon, then it wouldn't actually matter with the speed order between the Kyogre and the Ogerpon, because that Grassy Glide would then gain priority. But this is still a really nice position for the Calyrex. Yeah, there is that Rillaboom that's going to be joining the field. Not only getting Fake Out pressure to try and start stalling out some of these turns of Trick Room, but activating that priority on the Grassy Glide so that even if the Kyogre is slower and therefore would move first in Trick Room, that Ogerpon can now threaten a lot of damage. I'm very dubious if it's enough to KO through Reflect, though. It would be very close. I think you'd need to double it up with both the Rillaboom and the Ogerpon, but then that would allow this Calyrex free reign to go for a Glacial Lance into that Rillaboom.
That's the thing, though. Sometimes with that grassy terrain and playing and the little bit of extra energy from these Pokemon, you could always go through with something like a critical hit.
Yeah, well, you've spoken into existence now, haven't you?
I'm rolling the dice on this, and I feel that's what Louis might have to do as well. You've got two Pokemon that have the utility to go for that Grassy Glide, and possibly that is what the Kyogre is afraid of, so it is going to be leaving the field, and instead we're going to be rejoined by a Landorus here. So great to be able to see this in play. The Fake Out goes down into that Calyrex, however, so it's not going to be moving on this turn, as the Grassy Glide, using the terrain, went down into that Landorus switch-in.
Yeah, the Reflect quite important there, because that would have easily been a two-shot if the Reflect was not up, but that Landorus gets in relatively unscathed. A double up of two Grassy Glides would still KO it though, so It's an awkward position for the Landorus. It would have been maybe even preferable to sacrifice the Kyogre there and get the Landorus in at full HP, because if you're able to get off a Sansir Storm when you don't even need to worry about Earth Power now, you can absolutely go for Sansir Storm given that the rain's up and get some extra chip damage into Rillaboom, because Rillabooms can survive Glacial Lance, but not if that extra chip comes from the Sansir Storm. So I think whether the Landorus is able to fire off an attack this turn is going to be very, very crucial here. And actually, it should be able to, given the Rillaboom is not going to be going on the offensive. It's switching out into the Zamazenta instead.
Yeah, Zamazenta coming in, maybe wanting to try and use its Steel typing to combat a Sludge Bomb that could come through from this Landorus on the opposing side, but it is going to be the Glacial Lance being unleashed, first of all, in this Trick Room environment by that Calyrex. Does a little bit of chip to both the opposing Pokemon, and it is the Sansir Storm, so both of Louis' Pokemon go down to this ferocious Landorus, using the rain to guarantee its accuracy and guarantee the KOs.
Yeah, clearly predicting the Protect there, because you only switch in the Zamazenta and not Grassy Glide if you are predicting that Landorus to Protect, which is entirely reasonable. That could have been 2 Grassy Glides, and that should have been able to pick up the knockout based on how much damage the first one did. But Adrian able to read through that, just standing brave in the face of those 2 Grassy Glides, getting that Sansir Storm off, nice and consistent in the rain, and able to take this first game very, very comfortably, because here comes the Rillaboom. Doesn't particularly matter at this point. That's just going to be a Glacial Lance and then send us into that game 2.
Yeah, Rillaboom's got a bit of a tall order to climb through here. But I have to admit, Jamie, I love the way this Landorus came in towards the end game and has just been so dominant. Trick Room was able to be set up on Adrian's side. That makes things a little bit easier for Pokemon like the Calyrex. But then the Landorus just so formidable with the offensive pressure it can deal out. It has a utility of options, but that Sansir Storm being guaranteed to land its mark does just show what an incredible move it can be when it does make the connection.
Yeah, and the fact that it undersped the Ogerpon, I think, was quite important there as well. It doesn't tend to be consistently one's faster than the other, because yes, Ogerpon is naturally faster, and if run as fast as possible will outspeed, but Ogerpons tend to run pretty bulky so that they can survive the attacks while they're going for follow me redirection. But then if Landorus is run at maximum speed, that will outspeed the opposing Ogerpon. But also you want to prioritize bulk on the Landorus as well. So it seems like because there's the Grimmsnarl, and that compounds with any bulk that you invest into your Landorus, not so much speed investment, actually quite important there to get that underspeed and therefore get that Sansir Storm off.
Remind me, Jamie, did we even really see the Kyogre go for anything other than setting up the rain?
It went for an attack into a Protect.
Yeah, we didn't even see it get any damage down on the board, but just the sheer presence of it on the team set up these Pokemon for such great success, critically landing those Sansir Storms. So it was great to be able to see, you know, this Pokemon that was on, there were 2 of them in the top 8 in LA. We're now here in Utrecht. Maybe it is the Pokemon that is going to start cleaning out through Scarlet and Violet. Potentially,
because like the Assault Vest is not what you would have prepared for going into this tournament. If you did practice against Ice Rider and Kyogre, which like it's fringe usage, you might have considered it. It was usually the Mystic Water set. But by having the Assault Vest against the special attackers like that Calyrex Shadow Rider, it's going to be able to shrug off those attacks way more comfortably and also get 1 extra coverage move. Like, you always run Protect on the Mystic Water one, and therefore, well, do I want all 3 water moves because I need Water Spout for the most amount of damage? That one's guaranteed. Do I want Orange Impulse so I can still do spread damage when I'm not at full HP? Do I want Hydro Pump so I can get past Wide Guards? Do I want Thunder so I'm not just running water moves and therefore I have some coverage? Well, if you run the Assault Vest, you get all 4 of them.
Oh, it does make things so difficult to think which options do you want to go for, and you have to step back and think about the full team synergy at these points in time to see which combination is going to be the best. Coming into this game too, however, I think Adrian felt in the driver's seat for so much of this game. Even though at the beginning, Louis was kind of capitalizing on the Ogerpon and, you know, Kyogre didn't come in, so had the utility to get some good damage off. What does Louis need to do to adjust to be able to gain momentum back in this game too?
Well, if in that turn 1 he would have Ivy Cudgeled the Calyrex, I think even through Reflect that would have KO'd, because there was no Kyogre switch in to reduce the damage output from the Ivy Cudgel, and that would have been a massive swing of momentum in Lewis's side of Lewis's favor, because then there's no Trick Room in the future, and therefore your Calyrex can now just start sweeping. Your Ogerpon, we saw, outsped the opposing Landorus. It would be able to knock that out as well, even if that rain was set. An Astral Barrage and an Ivy Cudgel, even in the rain, should still be able to pick up the knockout on that Landorus. So, yeah, I think that was potentially a missed opportunity from Lewis. Yes, getting rid of the Grimmsnarl so that there wasn't the second screen is always a nice thing. Only having to deal with one of those screens is quite nice. But given that the Calyrex was taken down so low very quickly on that first game, granted it was a critical hit, well then only physical attackers were remaining, and therefore the Reflect was actually quite impactful.
Well, we're going to be jumping into game 2. It's going to be that Grimmsnarl paired up with the Calyrex Ice Rider for Adrian, and on Lewis's side, it's going to be once again that Calyrex Shadow Rider paired up with a teeny tiny Pokemon that I can't quite see.
It looks like it's going to be Ogerpon that's going to be hiding just underneath there.
There we go.
Yeah, so we are in the same mind game as that turn 1. Yeah, we can see there. That's going to be the Mold Breaker just activating, confirming, even though Ogerpon was just doing a little hide and seek there, was actually in the lead. But yeah, we have to contend with this mind game. Like we saw, on the first turn, Lewis did just target the Grimmsnarl and could have targeted the Calyrex. Well now, if he does decide to do exactly the same thing except Terra Ivy Cudgel into the Calyrex, well, that can be defeated by just the Kyogre switch in, reducing that damage output, and should allow that Calyrex to be able to survive. Granted, you won't get a screen, but you should still be able to KO that Calyrex with the combination of the 2 attacks. And look at that, we are seeing that switch out.
Yeah, these judgment calls can be critical, but Adrian going to be bringing in that Kyogre, so trying to rain on Lewis's parade right now, particularly if that Ogerpon has been banked on once again to deal the offensive pressure, and as the sparkles take to the sky, it looks exactly like this is what Lewis has opted for. You are going to get the embody aspect, you are going to get the attack boost, but at what cost? It's not going to be able to do as much damage. Adrian doesn't even have to necessarily utilize terrestrialization on his side of the field if the rain is up in play.
Yeah, we would have to if it's Astral Barrage, though, and yeah, we are going to be seeing that. Yeah, you make this play if you're confident that with dropping your Ghost-type weakness, you're still able to survive this attack. Because obviously this Terra Grass doesn't help in the face of the Ivy Cudgel. You're weak to fire regardless, but that is why that Kyogre switched in.
Exactly, and we're going to start seeing all the moves coming through, and it looks like Calyrex is taking a moment to compose itself, going for that nasty plot, getting itself up to +2 special attack. So even though this damage is going to not be able to get the KO, it puts the opposing Calyrex into such a dangerous position. Critically, however, that Trick Room has gone up, and the speed advantage is going to be on Adrian's side.
Yeah, so now you can get a Water Spout at full HP.
Oh, true.
But in order to stop that, you can switch out your now nasty plotted Calyrex into the Rillaboom to be able to get that priority Grassy Glide. And that should actually be able to KO the opposing Kyogre. So, yeah, based on the damage that happens... Oh, yeah, we're just going to see a double protect stall out Trick Room. That makes perfect sense to start off with. But based on the damage that happened into that Calyrex Ice Rider, did about 80%. So, therefore, with Reflect, it would have just done just over half. And that's actually incredibly close whether it would have KO'd in that first game based on that damage it took.
Yeah, you can see the Glacial Lance coming through, but of course to no avail. Lewis, I think, wisely burning through one of these turns, just going for the defensive play, and then quite possibly in the next turn could go for what you said, bring in that Rillaboom and just go for that Grassy Glide priority, because the damage capabilities of what this Kyogre can deal can be ferocious. You know that it has very good special defense, particularly with the Assault Vest, so you need to hit on the physical side. Yeah,
you do, and it's probably worth sacrificing your Nasty Plot at this point, because otherwise Water Spout will just clear the boards. You have to be able to deal with this Kyogre, and yep, that's what we're seeing. The Nasty Plot sacrificed. Here comes the Rillaboom.
There we go, Rillaboom comes in. It is the Gourmet Gottrum here, and it is going to be able to set up that grassy terrain, nicely putting it into a position to allow the priority to go to that Ogerpon. And that's exactly what we see. Kyogre goes down in one hit, the Embody aspect, giving it that attack boost, really guaranteeing that the opposing Titan can be felled. Adrian, down a restricted Pokemon, but critically, you still have your Calyrex in play. It can go for that big Ivy... what's it called? Glacial Lance.
Glacial Lance.
Glacial Lance.
Glacial Lance. And the Rillabooms are trained to survive that as well, as we saw Rillaboom able to clutch it out with the Glacial Lance. Very, very nicely done, because now it gets to go for Fake Out. So even if the Landorus comes in, if there wasn't Fake Out pressure, if the Rillaboom KO'd, that's probably still a sweep for Adrian by just going for Glacial Lance, Sandsear Storm, rains up, can't miss the Sandsear Storm once again. But now, because that Rillaboom did survive that attack, you do have Fake Out pressure. You can go for Fake Out into whatever comes in. And that's almost certainly going to be the Landorus, unless it wants to be the Grimmsnarl to get some screens. But I don't think that's going to help now. The Calyrex took so much damage from that initial Ivy Cudgel, it would be in range of another one, even if the Grimmsnarl comes in and goes for Reflect. So this might need to be Landorus, but then double protect to stall out like a turn of your own Trick Room here. But no, that does seem like it's going to be the Grimmsnarl instead.
Yeah, Grimmsnarl comes back into play here. You have the utility to go for some of these screens. At the same time, you can always try and start slowing down some of the pace of play, something like a Thunder Wave.
Yeah, you might need to consider that because you've taken so much damage. And yes, if you go for Thunder Wave, it might seem counterintuitive to slow down on opposing Pokemon in Trick Room, but maybe you do need that full paralysis chance.
That's it.
Like for this one, because yeah, the Fake Out's going to happen into that Calyrex. At least there's no damage this turn, and that is going to be the Reflect, but that shouldn't save the Calyrex from this Ivy Cudgel.
Yeah, that's the thing. Reflect can only do so much, but Grassy Glide does come through. That's just going to chip away at that opposing Grimmsnarl here. I mean, maybe you're looking at the Trick Room turns and how they're expiring, looking at the rain, you know how long I have to contend with the Kyogre, resetting that up. So possibly the Ogerpon's carving out a way to just deal with the Calyrex on its own.
It should be able to now, because it should be the last turn of Trick Room, and you can just Spiky Shield here. And then we've already seen it. If that is the Landorus waiting in the back, then you will be outspeeding it. So then you do need to contend with the fact that Thunder Wave can happen into the Ogerpon, because if it doesn't, Ivy Cudgel should probably be able to sweep through the rest of this game. You can just go for a Protect and maybe switch out into the Zamazenta as well, because Zamazenta is basically a perfect switch in here. The Rillaboom doesn't want to take the Glacial Lance. It wants to be able to reset its Fake Out pressure. And then Zamazenta, yes, you could lead see the Rillaboom predicting that, but that's still going to be way too passive and won't be making use of your Trick Room turns as effectively as you could. Oh, it's not even the Zamazenta.
No, not Zamazenta. It looks like only one restricted has been brought to this match for Lewis MARKL here. Instead, the Incineroar is going to come in and intimidate critically against that opposing Calyrex. It is going to go for the Protect, however. That does leave it a little bit more vulnerable to the potential Fake Out in that next turn as the light screen goes up. So late on in this game too, Adrian able to get both screens up on the field.
Yeah, but it might be a little bit too late at this point, because the Trick Room is about to expire, and he's on the last turn of Trick Room. He's had to sacrifice it by going for the Protect on the Calyrex. And now, because it's gone for the Protect on this turn, you can just pretty safely go for Fake Out into the Calyrex and also Ivy Cudgel, and especially so because the rain has also just disappeared. So even if the Landorus switches in to try and take that attack, it probably won't. And Body Aspect, by giving that +1 attack boost, allows that Ogerpon to pick up a load of one-hit knockouts. Granted, there is the Reflect, though, so the Landorus should be able to survive at least one of those attacks. So it is probably worth sacrificing your Calyrex and just trying to find a position to be able to sweep with the Landorus now. That might be Thunder Wave the Ogerpon, get some full paralysis potentially, but at least it would still put it slower than the Landorus in the future.
The issue is if Landorus does come in from the back, it doesn't have the reliability that it had in that game one because the rain is no longer in play. The Fake Out actually critically goes down into the opposing Grimmsnarl, leaving the Calyrex nice and free for the Ivy Cudgel to find its mark down. Now the Trick Room is over, that Pokemon is going to be the faster and will be able to fell the second restricted on Adrian's side.
Yeah, incredibly safe there. No Thunder Wave shenanigans coming through on this turn because there was that Fake Out and because there was the Protect already on the Calyrex. Unless there was a double Protect attempt, which might have been worth considering, and then next turn go for Thunder Wave into the opposing Ogerpon. Yeah, because now we're down to the Landorus once again, has just joined the field. Probably still does need to click Sandsear Storm even without the rain, because we've got basically full HP Pokemon on Lewis's side of the field. Sandsear Storm should be able to pick up the KO on the Ogerpon, given it dropped its grass typing, and depending on the training of the Incineroar would be able to survive or not. It would be quite close. So yeah, Thunder Wave into Ogerpon, maybe you need to gamble on that. But at the same time, there could be a very easy just switch out and Protect coming out from Lewis's side of the field, because then on the next turn, whatever happens, whether the Rillaboom, the Rillaboom joining the field survives this turn, you go Fake Out, but if not, you get the paid switch back into the Incineroar to get Fake Out to stop the Thunder Wave.
This is why they're called the pivoting pals. They switch in and out with each other and always apply that Fake Out pressure going forward. And that's exactly what Lewis has been able to position up here. You have the Fake Out to slow down whatever that Landorus wants to do. It is going to have to take that Earth Power damage, however, so Rillaboom does indeed go down. But as you mentioned, Jamie, it goes down. Doesn't matter. I've got an Incineroar in the back, says Lewis, and he can bring that in to apply that Fake Out pressure again.
Yeah, so going for the safe, consistent Earth Power there, probably predicting the Spiky Shield coming out from the Ogerpon, because if it is going on the offensive, or at least you predict it goes on the offensive, it kind of does need to be Sandsear Storm. Otherwise, if it gets off another Ivy Cudgel, that might be just game over. So if the Incineroar comes back in, which it probably should, given you want to stop the Thunder Wave potential, there's just one small mind game left of, well, do I Fake Out the Grimmsnarl and Ivy Cudgel it? Because then I definitely get that KO and also stop the Thunder Waves that could be coming out. Do you Fake Out the Landorus just to be able to stop the Sandsear Storm and maybe gamble with the Thunder Waves? Do you Fake Out the Landorus and double the Landorus? Because that should still be able to do absolutely massive damage, even if the Thunder Wave targets the Ogerpon. Wouldn't matter that the Ogerpon would then be slower on that turn because the Landorus would be flinching.
I guess it comes down to if you want to roll the dice on the Sandsear Storm, and Lewis says, I'm not playing that game today. The Thunder Wave will, of course, come down and connect into that Ogerpon, so it will make it slower, but critically possibly deny it the chance to attack if it does get fully paralyzed, and that is No, that was the flinch. That's okay. My German is improving. Now Ogerpon is going to be able to come through with that Ivy Cudgel. It is able to break through the paralysis and actually get rid of the Grimmsnarl for its troubles. Almost saying, hey, if you're going to paralyze me, you've got to be able to take this damage, and you sure can't. Now it is just one Pokemon on Adrian's side remaining. Yeah,
and we still got an entire full HP Calyrex waiting in the back, so you should just hard switch your Incineroar out here. Calyrex can survive any attack that Landorus wants to go for, and if it's Earth Power, well, then you still keep an entire Pokemon around. And if it's Sandsear Storm, well, that's going to give the KO into the opposing Ogerpon if it does connect, giving the paid switch back into the Incineroar, and then it's just Fake Out Nasty Plot Astral Barrage. Or if it does end up dodging the Ogerpon, if it breaks through the paralysis, then we just get the Ivy Cudgel KO.
Yeah, Landorus just looking to be in a very difficult spot here.
Oh, there was a dodge.
Oh, there we go. We're going to see...
Oh, double dodge.
Double dodge. This is what I mean. It's a little bit like being a Magikarp with a dream. You can have high hopes, but it's not always going to be easy to land that damage in play.
Look at that.
Is able to hang on. Is going to be able to maybe try again and get some damage off on the board, but I just think Lewis has all the answers here.
Yeah, the Landorus won't be able to do it here. Even if it was somehow faster than the opposing Calyrex, it's a full HP. Critical hit Earth Power maybe KOs Calyrex, but probably not. So it's just going to be an Astral Barrage to be able to take us into this next game. So very nicely done from Lewis there, especially so because he dropped one of the restricteds. The Zamazenta seems like it's actually quite good in this matchup, given you can White Guard on the Glacial Lance, therefore Ice Rider can do no damage on that turn. And also there's two very powerful spread moves coming out from Kyogre in the Water Spout and the Origin Pulse as well. But the fact that he dropped it allowed the pivoting action that we've seen so commonly across all the regulations. Yeah, there is the forfeit, just confirming that we are going into that game 3.
I think Lewis was able to masterfully gain momentum in that game by getting rid of that Kyogre, just like you said. It was such a powerhouse in this match, and for Adrian, it provided a lot of support, particularly with that Landorus, and removing it so effortlessly with that one Grassy Glide that came through just meant that, you know, this wasn't a utility option that Adrian had. You weren't able to apply all of that pressure with the Origin Pulses or the Water Spout that had been set up so beautifully in game 1.
Yeah, you kind of need the Reflect to be able to survive that Grassy Glide. I'm pretty sure it would be a guaranteed KO into that Kyogre, even if it was trained incredibly defensively, because you get that +1 from the Embody aspect. You get the Grassy Terrain boost as well. So, yeah, very, very nicely done to be able to store that Trick Room, because on that first turn, if that had just been, again, Astral Barrage and Ivy Cudgel into the Calyrex, it would have been a KO, and therefore there was no Trick Room, and it would have probably been a much smoother game. But the fact that, like, there was Nasty Plot, and then it wasn't even used, it was just switched out immediately and sacrificed to get that Grassy Terrain. The fact that Lewis was able still to find the path to victory through that Trick Room, when it could have been a much smoother game 1 and game 2 if there was Astral Barrage and Ivy Cudgel. Very, very nicely done. So are we going to see that in the game 3? Because 2 times in the game 1, if it was just Astral Barrage, Ivy Cudgel, game over probably immediately. Is that going to be the same in game 3?
It's amazing how that turn 1 can be so intense and really set the tone for the way that the whole match is going to play out. Whether or not that Kyogre is going to rejoin the field, and if Lewis really wants to capitalize on going for the Terastallization constantly onto this Ogerpon, is whether it's going to be able to pay off or not. I think one of the key things he did well when that Trick Room went up was able to stall it out so magnificently, going for those double protects where needed, buying a little bit of time, and critically removing the Pokemon from play that were able to thrive within that Trick Room environment.
Yeah, so we'll have to see if there's going to be any adaptations coming out from Adrian. Getting a screen would be useful. Getting that Reflect allows the Kyogre to survive a Grassy Glide. Getting the Light Screen means that the Calyrex Ice Rider would be shrugging off any Astral Barrages very, very comfortably. But are we going to see the same leads and the same mind game? No, we're not. There is a switcher from both of these trainers here.
Oh, Jamie, wow. I love this. Isn't this fantastic? We're going to be able to see the Urshifu join the field, paired up with that Grimmsnarl on the opposing side for Lewis. Zamazenta front and center with the Rillaboom.
Yeah, there we go. What a switch up for both of these trainers here. The Urshifu is threatening some pretty reasonable damage into the Zamazenta, but it also is at threat from the Grassy Glide that can come out, and that would out-prioritize the Grimmsnarl going for its Prankster Reflect, because Rillaboom is faster and therefore would do huge damage. But at the same time, you probably do want to put a stop to this Grimmsnarl. If you go for Fake Out and Heavy Slam, no screens will happen, because Heavy Slam should be able to pick up the knockout, and you would sacrifice a lot of your Zamazenta's HP from either a close combat or asserting strikes, but that's probably worth the trade to stop any of those screens.
That's the thing. Are the screens going to be able to come through? Not today, says the Rillaboom. The Fake Out lands directly down into that opposing Grimmsnarl as the U-turn is able to come through from the Urshifu there. Going for a little bit of repositioning. Adrian wanting to adjust the ball position, thinking, hey, I don't want to keep my Water type in against this Rillaboom with that potential priority Grassy Glide, utilizing the opportunity that maybe Fake Out was going to be wanting to be capitalized on. You now are able to bring this Calyrex Ice Rider into the field.
Yeah, and if this is just a Heavy Slam once again into that Grimmsnarl, that should be able to pick up the knockout quite easily. No Reflect, and yep, there we go. Goodbye, Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, that's Grimmsnarl out of here. A fantastic double up on Lewis's side, identifying that the screens and the protection and the paralysis are all games he does not want to play here in Swiss round 7. So already takes a Pokemon down early doors.
Yeah, so if that's going to be the Urshifu coming back in, yes, it can threaten the Surging Strikes. Yep, there we go. There is that Urshifu joining the field. And Close Combat probably KOs the Rillaboom from this range. And there is no Reflect, so Grassy Glide will still do absolutely massive damage, but Grassy Glide doesn't KO a Scarf Rillaboom. So it should be able to get off at least one more attack if it does want to. And then you can go for your Leech Seed into the Zamazenta, start racking up that recovery, because you can't safely go for a Glacial Lance on this turn because there's always the threat of White Guard. But at the same time, the Zamazenta probably does actually just want to attack, and therefore you could consider going for the Glacial Lance into the Rillaboom to be able to pick up that knockout. That would allow you the Urshifu attack into the Zamazenta instead, whether that's Close Combat or Surging Strikes will do pretty respectable damage either way.
But I do think the Scarf makes this Urshifu so vulnerable because it can't protect, so it cannot find a way around a priority Grassy Glide coming through from the Rillaboom. Terrestrialization will take to the stage, though, once again here, and it is once again going to be on this Calyrex. It's going to be turning into that Grass type, giving itself its protective, defensive capabilities in play.
Yeah, it's going to be able to take the Grass attacks very, very comfortably now from the opposing Rillaboom, but the Grass attack does go into the Urshifu. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, the Assault Vest, you know, giving it defensive support, but not going to be making it the most offensive, even though the Grassy terrain was in play and boosting up that Grass type attack. The Urshifu was trained to survive it, was able to hang on, and could retaliate with that U-turn. So Adrian able to switch up the ball position once again, brings in the Kyogre.
Yeah, but if that's a body press into that slot, that's going to do a huge amount of damage and put it in range of Grass Glide. There it is. Oh, look at that damage.
Oh my goodness, right down into the orange zone. Yes, you may set up your Trick Room, but you've got no way to block that priority that the Rillaboom is capable of going for still. It was able to hang on. It's getting that little bit of recovery. Kyogre, you can recover as much as you like. We know how much that Grassy Glide will do.
Yeah, I think this game's over. It's White Guard, Grassy Glide twice into that Water type slot, and then it's just a 1v4, and nothing can be done by this Calyrex. You can only Leech Seed the opposing Zamazenta, and that takes far too long to be able to get rid of it. So I think this is just a perfect pin now.
I feel like in this set, Lewis came out a little bit slow at the beginning. Adrian was able to get that game 1, but through game 2 and now in game 3, Lewis is not stopping at anything. Adrian forced to switch one Water type out for another, brings in the Urshifu as the Zamazenta wisely goes for that White Guard to stop the potential spread attacks on the opposing side. But Rillaboom knows what it needs to do, goes for that Grassy Glide. One Pokemon down, there's only 2 remaining now on Adrian's side.
Yeah, and it's just going to be exactly the same play next turn. And yeah, there was the Glacial Lance. It kind of had to be. You had to, I think you just had to play for Louis, not going for the White Guard there. But yeah, Glacial Lance blocked by the White Guard. We're going to see exactly the same play next turn. There is no reason not to just White Guard and Grassy Glide the Water type once again. And then you should easily be able to take care of this opposing Calyrex, especially because you can actually just click White Guard and whatever you want for the rest of the game.
Yeah, pick a move here because the only offensive one on Calyrex's side is that Glacial Lance. You'd be forcing it to go for Leech Seed in any way, but the White Guard stopping all that damage from coming through and most critically protecting up that Rillaboom that can just go straight for this Grassy Glide. That's another Pokemon down. Rillaboom is unstoppable. Now you just have to deal with this Calyrex on the opposing side, but Lewis has just got his 2 lead Pokemon out front and center, hasn't even had to make any switches. Yes, you're able to get the Leech Seed down on the Zamazenta. Good for you there, Calyrex, but you cannot go for the Leech Seed into the Rillaboom.
Yeah, this game was decided pretty early on, I think. Getting rid of the screen potential on the Grimmsnarl, that just freed up your Rillaboom to just go on the offensive completely. As soon as everything was in Grassy Glide range, White Guard Grassy Glide becomes incredibly safe and cannot be punished at all.
I mean, you're not even switching out the Zamazenta here. It's going to be the Rillaboom bringing in the Calyrex, which is the perfect play. You can go for that White Guard once again. And sure, if you want to go for the Leech Seed, maybe calling a switch, you can get a little bit more recovery. But all it's going to take is a single target Astral Barrage to start dealing with this opposing Calyrex. It doesn't even get a second Leech Seed off. It's just going to go straight for a Protect, try and reap up some of the rewards it can get from the grassy terrain and the Leech Seed, but Lewis already starting to set up for this end game. He's got his eye on the prize of Phase 2.
Go on, let's see another +6 Calyrex, right? He did it in the finals last year.
Oh.
You can just go for White Guard and Nasty Plot 3 times, right? But you probably only need 1 to be able to get that KO. But yeah, White Guard Nasty Plot is just going to be unbelievably safe here. Are we going to get that +6?
I don't know if we're going to quite get to +6, but it looks like at the very least we might be making it to a +2. Leech Seed does come through, will connect onto that Calyrex, going to be giving a little bit more HP to the opposing Calyrex as that first Nasty Plot comes through. As you said, Jamie, we're going to need to see 3 for a complete run back here of what Lewis was able to mastermind last time, but I feel like it might not be necessary.
It's probably not necessary, but when do you get the opportunity to get to +6, right?
Do we care if it's necessary or not, Jamie? Is that what we're saying?
No, it's a throwback.
Oh, the nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you're doing it, because you were able to nasty plot 3 times in the finals last year. Surely you go for it again here. No, Astral Barrage and Body Press will be able to KO. The Trick Room's going to be up, therefore you can just go on the offensive here. And yes, +2 Astral Barrage, single target, and Body Press will be enough to pick up this KO. It's going to be one more turn to be able to do that. The Calyrex just going for the Protect here. Maybe allowing another round of, oh, do I actually get to +6 because of the nostalgia? Go on, do it.
Do you know what would have been wild if you actually predicted the Protect on the opposing side and went, do you know what, I'm going to go for another nasty plot just because I can. Like, why not if you're predicting a Protect? But better to play it that little bit more safe and just go on the offensive now, because there's only so much time this Calyrex has left.
I mean, to be fair, if the Calyrex gets an octuple Protect, that's technically a win condition. Like, I haven't done the maths for octuple Protect, but no, not even going to be going for that. Single target Astral Barrage even picks up the KO. And what a turnaround for Lewis MARKL here, able to advance into Phase 2.
Wasn't quite a +6 Calyrex, but Jamie, we got to see it get that end game scenario.